Welcome back to Cuyahoga Falls Chronicles, where we explore the lives, mysteries, and memories that shaped our town's past.
Today, we're digging into the story quite literally of a man who made a life out of caring for the dead. Peter Lindquist, the longtime sexton of Oakwood Cemetery. His story spans continents, wars, pandemics, and one very personal mission: to dig his own grave.
In September of 1953, the Akron Beacon-Journal profiled Peter Lindquist, then 80 years old, still working full-time at Oakwood Cemetery in Cuyahoga Falls. He had a daily 6:30 a.m. start and often dug 3 to 4 graves a day with a pick and shovel.
He told the reporter, "It's not easy work. You've got to dig 'em rain or shine, summer or winter, and there's no union for gravediggers either."
Peter saw the job not just as labor, but as art. He said, "I look on it as an art, just as you consider anything else being an art. So I'd just like to dig my own grave."
Now that might sound morbid, but not to Peter. After all, he had spent 20 years planting trees, maintaining headstones, and even caring for the flowers placed by loved ones. He knew the names on the graves. In fact, he once said that if you read all the stones in the Catholic section, you'd think you were living in a foreign land.
Peter wasn't from Ohio originally. He was born in Sweden and served in the Swedish Army before immigrating to the United States in 1905. He made Cuyahoga Falls his home for 43 years.
Before becoming Oakwood's sexton, Peter worked as an iron molder for the Falls Clutch Company and later Turner, Vaughan and Taylor Company. When he retired from molding, he said he wanted a fresh air job. That's when he took over the cemetery duties.
And while Peter spent much of his time tending to the departed, he also carried grief of his own. His first wife and one of his sons were buried at Oakwood. That son died during the flu pandemic while serving as a medic at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Peter never stopped caring for their graves. He told the Beacon reporter that he kept their plots tidy, just like all the others. But he admitted, sometimes he'd pause, look down, and just remember. "I lost a wonderful boy," he said, but he always added a note of gratitude. "I still have one son left, and one to be proud of."
That son was Colonel Albert A. Lindquist, who was serving in the U.S. Army and stationed in St. Louis at the time.
Peter's final wish was to dig his own grave, a last act of craftsmanship from someone who had dug hundreds, maybe thousands for others. He never got to complete that wish, but he certainly left his mark on the land.
He even joked about how he had planted trees at Oakwood, only to cut many of them down later when the roots got into his graves. You could say Peter knew every inch of that cemetery, both above and below ground.
There was one dream he never fulfilled, going back to Sweden. Every time he planned to return to the old country, something got in the way. But he hadn't given up even at 80. He said, "I'm talking about still doing it someday, if I can get away from my graves long enough."
Peter Lindquist passed away on January 29, 1959, at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver, Colorado. He was 86 years old and had spent the last 18 months living with his son, Colonel Albert Lindquist.
He had been in poor health since 1954, but continued to be remembered by the community he served. His funeral was held at McGowan Reed Funeral Home, with burial, appropriately, at Oakwood Cemetery, where he had worked for decades.
Peter was also deeply involved in local fraternal organizations. He belonged to Star Lodge 187 F&AM, the Vasa Order Swedish Lodge, the International Order of Good Templars, and the Yusuf Khan Grotto.
A man of routine, of service, and of deep reverence for the lives buried beneath his feet. Peter Lindquist wasn't just a cemetery worker, he was a caretaker of memories.
If you found Peter's story moving, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who values the quiet contributions of people like him.
And let us know in the comments, what's the most meaningful job you've ever heard of? Would you want to dig your own grave like Peter?
We'll be back next week with another story from the heart of Cuyahoga Falls. Until then, remember, every stone tells a story. And some, like Peter's, are carved in more than granite.